This is a story called The Little Monsters, Chapter 41. The kids learn to play musical instruments and join an orchestra. The kids have decided that they all want to learn to play musical instruments, so they ask their parents if they can, and they all say yeah. Excuse me. When the kids went to their lessons, they had to borrow their instruments. Their parents didn't want to buy them any in case they gave up on their lessons. After about 5 lessons, the kids were really good, and one of their music teachers asked if they'd like to join her orchestra, and they agreed. The orchestra was made up of kids aged 8 to 19. The kids had their first performance coming up in just a few weeks, and so they knew that they had to practice. Leading up to their performance, they practiced all the time. On the night of their first performance, they were quite nervous, but it didn't stop them from sneakily playing tricks on the audience. They put whoopee cushions on people's seats as usual, and when people sat on them, they deflated, making a loud farting noise. Then it was time for them to go on stage. Despite how nervous they were, they performed brilliantly. Halfway through they took a break, and during that time they went round putting fart bombs on the audience's seats, and when they sat on them they created a horrible smell. Then as they were going back on stage, they pinched people's bums, pulled their hair and nipped the back of their necks. When they got back on stage, they settled down and performed beautifully. When they finished, their instructor told them that they had another performance coming up in a couple of weeks. She'd heard that the little monsters could sing, and she asked them if they'd sing at their next performance, and they agreed. Then they went home with their parents. Over the next couple of weeks, the gang rehearsed not just with the rest of the orchestra, but at home and together too. On the night of their second performance, they weren't really nervous at all. Before they went on the stage, they went round putting toy snakes on the audience's seats. When they sat on them, they bit their bums, causing them to jump up, howling in pain. Then it was time for the kids to go on stage and get ready to perform. When they started, the gang sang a couple of songs, and then they joined the rest of the orchestra. After they'd performed for an hour, they took a break. During the break, the gang loaded their pea shooters with bits of raw carrots. Then they went round putting toy cars on the audience's seats. When they sat on them, they jumped up, howling in pain. Then it was time for everyone to go back on stage. At the end of their performance, everyone was told that they had another gig the following week. Throughout that week, everyone rehearsed really hard all week. On the night of their performance, the gang let their toy rats go amongst the audience, causing them to scream. When someone pointed out that the rats were fake, everyone laughed. Then the kids went on stage and settled down ready for their performance. That night they only performed for an hour, so they didn't get a break halfway through. Again, just before they left, the conductor spoke to them. She told them that they had another performance in 3 weeks, and that this time it was in 2 parts. An hour and a half for each part. Again, leading up to it, the kids rehearsed non-stop. On the night, the kids put their soft toy cars on the audience's seats. When they sat on them, they beeped, and it sounded like farting. Then they went on stage and performed. After the first slot, everyone took a break for 15 minutes. Just as the gang finished their drinks, a member of staff approached them and asked them to sing, and they agreed. They sang 2 songs, and then it was time for the whole orchestra to go back on stage. Before they started performing, Their conductor told them that they had another performance booked for the following week. This time she wanted Kicker and Creeper to sing together, and of course they agreed. This time the girls rehearsed their songs together over and over, as well as rehearsing with the orchestra. On the night of their performance, the girls sang first and then they performed with the orchestra. When they took a 15-minute break, the gang didn't play any tricks on people because they were asked to sing again. They sang for 10 minutes and then they had just enough time to drink their drink and to go to the toilet. Then they went back on stage with the orchestra. Before they began performing, their conductor spoke to them and told them that they had another performance the following week. She asked Stumpy and Stampy if they'd like to sing and they agreed. Leading up to the night of their performance, the boys rehearsed constantly and so did the orchestra. On the night, the gang went round putting toy spiders on the audience's seats. When they sat on them, they bit their bums, causing them to jump up howling in pain. Then they all went on the stage ready for their performance. The boys sang their solo and then they performed with the orchestra. They performed for about an hour and then they took a 10-minute break. During that time, the gang filled their pea shooters with raw carrots before they went back on stage. They fired them at the back of people's heads when they walked past. When they went back on stage, their conductor told them that they had another performance coming up in 2 weeks' time. She asked the gang if they'd sing a solo together and they agreed. They rehearsed constantly together for their solo and of course with the orchestra. On the night, as always, the gang sang beautifully. They had a quick drink of water and then they performed with the orchestra. Halfway through they took a 10-minute break. During that time the gang were asked if they'd sing again at the end of the night and they agreed. Then it was time for the orchestra to go back on stage to give their last performance of the night. They performed for about 1.5 hours. When they'd finished, the gang took a 20-minute break and then they went back on stage and sang their hearts out for 45 minutes. When they'd finished, they received a standing ovation. When they went home, they were all so exhausted that they all fell asleep before they even put their pyjamas on. The end of chapter 41. Thanks for watching, guys. Hope you like it. Bye.